Am I the a-hole for telling my wife it's her own fault for not getting invited on a group trip plus update? Original post, me 32 male and my wife 31 female have been together for about 6 years. We get along wonderfully and through everything have never had any major fights except for one thing. I personally feel like my wife makes no effort to get along with my friends. Now, to give context, all of my friends and I went to the same university for undergrad. 3 guys and 3 girls that are married. My wife is the only one that did not have this common trait of attending undergrad between the 8 of us, which is really not a big deal if you ask me. Early on in our relationship, my friends would always try and be friendly to her and talk to her when we would mutually hang out. My wife was cordial, but you could tell that she was uncomfortable. I would speak with her about this, and she would always comment that she was an outsider to all of us. This always personally made me slightly miffed because I felt that my friends always made an effort to include her and make sure that she wasn't singled out. Throughout the years, my wife would attend events with me, but would seem distant and would sometimes skip group events to hang out with her college friends if she had something else planned. My friends never said anything, but were always nice and treated her kindly. Well, this week I got a group text from my friends about planning a group vacation to somewhere next year. I quickly noticed my wife wasn't on the group text and asked about it. I got a call from one of my friends who basically said that they didn't invite my wife because, based on all the other previous interactions, they didn't think that she would want to attend. Even if she did want to attend, her attitude is crappy and they don't want it to ruin the vacation. I thanked my friend for his honesty and told him I'd think about it. And while I love my wife, I figured she more than likely wouldn't want to go on a vacation with them. So I told my wife about the trip and she asked about details. I told her that while I was invited, she wasn't, and it wasn't because of anything she did, but because they thought that she wouldn't want to attend. Well, this statement just seemed to be about how she is an outsider. She said that because of the history us 7 have together, she had no chance of ever being part of the group. She then went on to rant about how my friends are awful people and that she deserved to be invited even if she didn't want to be there because she is my wife. I sat there and listened to her vent, and then finally I calmly told her that it was pretty much her own fault for not being invited because she had taken such a hostile stance with them from the get-go. She became a self-fulfilling prophecy about being an outsider. That's paraphrasing, but something along those lines. She left the house and went to her mother's. I haven't spoke to her in several days despite texts and phone calls to try and talk to her. I probably should have been more diplomatic about what I said, but I do feel my friends have been treated unfairly. Am I the a-hole? Now for the comments before reading the update. Yes, you are the a-hole for not declining the event when they made it clear that your wife wasn't invited. It's all couples, all spouses, except her. You can call it a self-fulfilling prophecy if you like, but they really are proving exactly what she's feared all along. That you not only didn't defend your wife, but thanked the friend who spelled out why she wasn't invited is the definition of yikes. Also, want to call out this line. She would sometimes skip group events to hang out with her college friends if she had something else planned. If she had something else planned, she didn't skip your events. She had plans with the equivalent group to the one that you had plans with. Redditor info. Did you express to your friends that it was highly inappropriate for you to attend a couple's vacation without your wife? Because in the end, that is what this is, a couple's vacation. They're going as married pairs and essentially invited you as their single friend, despite the fact that you are married. You seem to blame your wife 100% for her inability to break into the group. How much time do you spend with her friends? OOP. I did express my concerns to my friend about how my wife would take it, but the response was that they were standing on not inviting her, and I feel like I personally make an effort to hang out with her friends and their significant others. For instance, my wife loves to golf, and while I'm not super into it, during the summer I will go out with her friend and her husband who enjoy doing it because I know she enjoys it. I don't feel the same reciprocation. Redditor. I really want to say not the a-hole, but I feel like there is some missing information here. Has your friends done anything to hurt or insult your wife? Also, how do her friends treat you? OOP, her friends are nice to me. That's never been an issue. My friends have always been polite to my wife. As I said in my post, it's been 6 years, and she's been invited to essentially everything with this group. She sometimes doesn't come out because she has plans with her friends or just doesn't want to go, but she will generally at least come out and say hi to everyone. Redditor, has she voiced any specific concerns about your friends? OOP, prior to this, no. She has always just said that she felt that she wished she had gone to undergrad with us, so she felt like she could be part of the group, but it was impossible for her to fit in even though everyone liked her. Redditor, man, I'm going to be honest. Sounds like they closed ranks and iced her out years ago. You're just too attached to them to see their fault in this. Being polite is not being friendly and welcoming, and there is little worse than regularly joining a group that has their stories and idiosyncrasies and don't let you in. I think you may have rose-colored glasses on when it comes to your friends. P.S. It is really, really odd to me that all your group friends married each other. Were they mad that you dated and married an outsider? Now for some additional information from OP. Info. Did you express to your friends that it was highly inappropriate for you to attend a couple's vacation without your wife? Because in the end, that is what it is, a couple's vacation. They're going as married pairs and essentially invited you as their single friend, despite the fact that you are married. You seem to blame your wife 100% for her inability to break into the group. How much time do you spend with her friends? I did express my concerns to my friend about how my wife would take it, but the response was that they were standing on not inviting her. And I feel like I personally make an effort to hang out with her friends and their significant others. For instance, my wife loves to golf, and while I'm not super into it, during the summer I will go out with her friend and her husband who enjoy doing it because I know that she enjoys it. I don't feel the same reciprocation. Her friends are nice to me. That's never been an issue. My friends have always been polite to my wife. As I said in my post, it's been 6 years, and she's been invited to essentially everything with this group. She sometimes doesn't come out because she has plans with her friends or just doesn't want to go, but she will generally at least come out and say hi to everyone. Has she voiced any specific concerns about your friends? Prior to this, no. She just always said that she felt that she wished that she had gone undergrad with us so that she felt like she could be part of the group, but it was impossible for her to fit in, even though everyone liked her. Now for the update. So I had gotten some people who were asking for an update, so I figured I'd give one. I deleted my original post because holy cow, I got some nasty messages from y'all. Some of which I'll say I deserved, others were just absolutely horrid. But hey, I asked for advice and I had to deal with it. As for the raking over the coals it received in the comments, you guys were right. A lot of your comments rang true and made me realize how much of an a-hole I was being to my wife. I don't have any excuse for what I was thinking previously, but it was wrong. And in that moment, I realized that without intervention on my part, I was going to lose my wife. Hell, even with intervention, there was still a chance I would lose her. It was a giant wake-up call to myself of how I was treating someone I loved and cared about. How could I be so callous and cold? Well, I started with a phone call and a text to her. I stated the same in both, that I would not be attending the trip and that when she was ready to talk, I would be at home waiting and that I was more than sorry that I could ever be. I wouldn't be bugging her again until she was ready. So what happened in the first week following everything? It was radio silence for about 2 days, which I spent the entirety of pretty much shut off from the world, but my wife pulled into the driveway mid-afternoon and came into the house. I could tell she was on the verge of tears, and so was I. She also wanted to have a serious talk about us, our relationship, and it would likely be a rest of the day conversation. So I let her speak. The first conversations were requirements for our relationship had to be met to even potentially salvage it. Couples counseling. I would not be friends out with my old college friends, except for one couple, which will be relevant shortly. and more effort and love from me. I know many commenters said in my post that they didn't think I loved my wife, but I do. I seriously do. She's amazing, and I wouldn't have married her if I didn't love her. So of course I agreed. She made it clear to me that even if I did all these things, it didn't guarantee she would stay. I told her I understood, and that all I could do was try and make up for what I could. I then asked why I would be allowed to remain friends with the one couple. We'll call them J and K. She told me that after the text about her being not invited came out, and my dumbass response, J and K reached out to her. They apparently hadn't been told of this plan, and the two other couples had sprung it on them. When I responded about thinking about still going, they were pretty upset with my response and reached out to her to make sure she was okay. They had text to back them up, not knowing about her not being invited, and text reaming out the other two couples for doing this. They didn't text me or let me know anything because they were upset with me too, rightly so. The conversation went on for several more hours, lots of tears, but it did end with a hug. So where does that bring us to today? In the months since the incident, and while things are not fully healed, I would say we are headed in the right direction. Couples counseling has been something that I wished I would have done earlier and has been very eye-opening to many of my behaviors. My wife has also said that it has been useful to her as well, especially regarding our friendships. One of the main things I have learned is that I was not as open as I thought I was with my wife's friends. Hell, she could have written the same post about me and it would have been correct. While I was nice, was I putting in the effort? Was I actively engaging with the group? How could I hold my wife to a standard that I myself wasn't even meeting with her friends? It was like a lightning bolt to my head of how I had been acting. My wife also admitted that she was closed off to the group and that while she was friendly, she and myself had many of the same behaviors with each other's friends. I tried to remedy that and have been actively working to be more engaged and social with her friends. I've even started golfing on my own with one of her friends' husbands, and I think she appreciates the effort on that end. I've also noticed that in hanging out with J and K, she's been much more outgoing and willing to talk with them and engage with conversation. It isn't lost on me that this is likely due to the other two couples being awful people that she didn't talk previously, but I do greatly enjoy being able to spend time with my wife and my friends. The couples that planned the trip, I have talked to them once since, and it was a quick phone call to my ex-friend where I basically said I was going to go non-contact if an apology was not issued to my wife. A half-assed sorry was given, but obviously done just to try and appease me. I haven't spoken to them since, and they haven't reached out to me. Good riddance. As for how my wife and I are, we are good. While I don't think I'll truly ever know how much I hurt her with my statements, I feel lucky that I've been given the chance to make amends. I gave her a small kiss on the cheek and an outing with J and K the other night. It's been the first sign of intimacy in a while, and my heart skipped a beat when she looked at me and smiled. It's a long road, and I consider myself lucky that I have been given an extra opportunity considering the circumstances I put our relationship in. And hell, maybe in a month, she decides that she's had enough and I would only have myself to blame if that happens. But for the moment, I have started the process to rebuild my marriage and focus on the women I love and owe a lot to. She is an amazing person, and I thank God I get the opportunity to try and learn from my experiences and become a better husband for her. Thanks for listening, you all. Story 2. I, 36 male, set up two of my friends, 36 female and 36 male. I found out today he has been catfishing me as his partner on her phone to check up on our friendship, plus update. Original post. I have a childhood friend, Emily, I've known since we were 5. We originally met because our respective fathers were both German and living in the UK, having married British women. They became friends and we were basically raised as siblings. Nothing remotely romantic has ever happened between us. It's accurate to say that I treat her like I do my other sisters. People struggle at times to believe nothing has happened between us, but is it so insane for someone with 3 sisters to treat a childhood friend as a 4th? We stopped being friends briefly when she got married way too young to her boss. He ended up being incredibly abusive. controlling her life at every level, and over the 3 years they were together, he basically isolated her from all friends and family. We reconciled when she divorced him. Around this time, I attended university and met my now wife early on. We were assigned to the same floor in the halls. We've been together for 17 years now, and she's become really close to Emily over the years. Also at the university, I met a guy, George, on my course. We were part of the same friendship group, but didn't stay in touch until we coincidentally ended up working together a good 10 years after graduation. I ended up introducing him to Emily, and they started a relationship. A year or so later, they moved in together. Emily was happy, and he was happy. On the face of things, he's seemingly been fine with me and Emily's friendship and never said anything. Over the past few weeks, I started getting texts from her, sometimes late at night. That was just off. I was suspicious when she used a common British shortening of my full name rather than the traditional German version our respective fathers and she would always use, and when sometimes overtly flirty, almost outright sexting occurred, I immediately shut it down, 100% sure it wasn't her. I basically called him out and asked if this was in fact George using her phone, and bluntly asked why he was trying to sext with me as his girlfriend. He never responded, but after explaining the situation to my wife, she went over to Emily's with my phone to see what was going on. I wasn't there for this, but she showed Emily some of our entire text history and what he had done. George came home and they confronted him. He first outright denied it and had the balls to accuse Emily of sexting me and trying to hide, and said cheating from my wife by saying that he did it. Emily just left with my wife to come stay with us after this because there wasn't any reasoning with him. The morning after he called and begged her to come home, he was crying and threw himself at her feet, claiming he did it out of jealousy. He highlighted that she was in the habit of deleting our conversations, which drove him mad. An apparent choice she makes for all of her texts with everyone, not just me. And he was always jealous of our relationship. He found it hard to see me with her, and after he saw her saying stuff like how she loved me, again, siblings not being able to read her text, drove him to basically go fishing to establish our relationship. The sexting was an attempt to bluntly see if it was something we, or more specifically I, would engage in. At this point, Emily asked for mine and my wife's opinion on this whole thing. I call bullshit on this being a mistake, something he was driven to by jealousy. He violated her privacy by going through her phone, risked our friendship by masquerading as her, risked my marriage by trying to bait me into sexting a friend, risked Emily and my wife's friendship by making it look like Emily was sexting me. The entire thing was cluster F. I didn't outright say that she should leave him, but I highlighted how dishonest this whole thing was. She eventually went back home and I didn't hear anything for a few days, but Emily eventually revealed to my wife that she had functionally forgiven him. My wife worked out from the conversation what had happened. He had basically flipped the script on me by playing into fears from her marriage. He described me as another controlling male trying to dictate who she had a relationship with. He encouraged her to make her own decision. Not bad advice in theory, but she had to ignore me because I didn't have her best interest at heart. I was controlling her like her ex. My wife quietly pointed out he was in fact being like her ex, not me. He was driving a wedge between her and the family. At this point, Emily just gave up. Said she couldn't win, couldn't decide between the man that she loves and her brother, so F it. Let's pretend it never happened. We haven't really spoken since. Apparently part of forgetting this ever happened is also giving in to his worries about our friendship. Every time I try and bring up what he did, I've either been ignored or told to stay out of it. Honestly, this pisses me off that he's gotten exactly what he wanted. He's stopped us talking. I know I can't force her to break up with him, but it seemingly is a catch-22. I can't push her to make a decision about what he did while he's got her convinced that I'm controlling her. I rarely see George at work, and he's rightly kept the F away from me. I was tempted to bring my sisters into this cluster F, tell them what happened. They love her like a sister too, and see if they can talk some sense into Emily, but that's somewhat manipulative too. So any advice here? Let shitty sleeping dogs lie? Try and get her to deal with what he did rather than sweeping it under the rug? Now for the updates. Update 1. So, I followed the general advice of just leaving the entire situation alone. I agree any interference from me or my family would be manipulative and controlling, albeit well-meaning. So I haven't really spoken to Emily since slightly before Christmas, but her mother contacted me a little after New Year's to ask if I knew what was going on with her. Emily's cousin back in Germany had contacted her mother saying that she had turned up on her doorstep, having flown in from the UK on the 4th after apparently breaking up with George. According to her mother, Emily had come back to her hometown for the holidays. She brought George, and at some point they ran into her ex-husband at the pub. For context, we grew up in a tiny village in the arse end of nowhere. There's literally nothing to our village but a pub, a post office, and a small market. Her ex still lives where we grew up. So this is all information relayed to me via Emily's mother, but apparently at some point, George approached Emily's ex-husband and asked for some advice. George is familiar with the story of their relationship and know how controlling he was and why they divorced. Somewhat to her ex-husband's credit, he apparently refused to answer any questions and quietly approached Emily's mother to relay what he had asked. Now, this is according to him, and George denies it, but he said George asked him how to handle me in terms of my friendship with Emily. I have no idea what Emily's ex-husband's motivation was here, but they've been divorced for a decade now, and he hasn't contacted her in this time, so I'm inclined to believe it wasn't further attempts at interfering with her life. Maybe it was actually manipulation. Maybe in the decades since they've been divorced, he's become a better man. Who knows? We're all inclined to believe that it is what was asked, despite George denying it, because how else would her ex-husband know he had an issue with me recently? He isn't in contact with anyone who would know about the recent issues. Also, to be honest, the ex never had an issue with me. He saw me as a child despite being the same age as his then wife and constantly called me kiddo and asked how school was. It would be a very specific shot in the dark on his part to assume George had an issue with me without George saying so himself. So her mother told Emily what George had tried to do and pointed out that her boyfriend is now trying to emulate her ex-husband's behavior and encouraged her to confront him over this and also what happened over the last month rather than ignoring it. Nobody was privy to the discussion they had, but he left sometime after it to return to their shared home, and she stayed with her mother, saying they had broken up. She stayed with her mother until the day after, where she, without any warning, left for Germany. The cousin she's staying with assures us she's relatively fine, she's just overwhelmed and embarrassed she let this happen again. She couldn't handle being where she might run into either ex, so staying with her mother was off the table, and she just ran somewhere far but safe. I still haven't spoken to Emily. I've sent her a message with some condolences and reassured her she will always have a home here in the UK. I've decided to continue to give her space while making it clear I am there for her. She hasn't responded, but I assume this is just out of the awkwardness over what happened and how technically George was once my friend. He hasn't spoken to me either, and I haven't seen him at work at all. So yeah, not a happy ending per se. It shouldn't have taken her abusive ex getting involved for a resolution, but as people predicted, George was being abusive and he would repeat that behavior. I suppose it was relatively painless that he showed his true colors so emphatically without much further abuse. This could have dragged on. Thanks for the advice. Me staying out of it didn't make this any easier for her, but it probably avoided making it worse. Update 2. I jumped the gun a little with the previous update, and looking back, I hadn't actually spoken to Emily, and it was all secondhand information. TLDR of everything so far is my childhood friend Emily, then boyfriend George, sexted me as her to try and see if anything was going on between us. After being confronted, he approached her abusive ex-husband, and she left him, realizing twice now she's fallen for abusive men. Given this whole thing has now been entirely sorted out in the 3 months since it happened, I thought I'd actually give an actual full resolution. So Emily came back to the UK just before the country was locked down and moved in with us, reluctantly. We grabbed some beers and played Divinity 2, while we hashed out exactly what went down from her perspective. I apologized for going behind her back and speaking to her mother about it all. Situations like this are never helped by information being relayed through other people, and I asked if she wanted to go through it all start to finish. Basically, she buried her head in the sand the day she found out he had been trying to sex me as her. It was just too much. She couldn't win. She either lost the man she loved and the lifestyle she had, or lost her brother. I assured her she'd never lose me, but she revealed she low-key hated the fact that she allowed herself to be taken advantage of like this twice and couldn't face me having not listened to my advice. She also mentioned that breaking up with him would inevitably land her on my doorstep for support, and that made her feel bad also, hence escaping to Germany and not talking to me about this. This went deeper, and she opened up about her insecurities, how she regretted never going to university, instead marrying her abusive ex-husband, and how she feels like an accessory to everyone else's happiness. She saw me and my wife, a power couple as she put it, and just felt so small by comparison. She did love George, but leaving him would leave her with functionally nothing again, and she couldn't handle that. We talked about this a lot. I revealed I was aware my support of her could be a problem. I was feeling like I had made their relationship awkward by being so involved in her life. It might have been hard for George feeling like her boyfriend while I was there picking up her tabs, doing the DIY, and basically acting like a father coddling his child. I asked if my, with retrospection, financial support of her tied into this feeling of inadequacy, like I was dragging her along for my ride, and she said it was a problem. She felt trapped when the relationship ended because she had no independence or true control. While I would never use my position to control her, she would still be living by someone else's good graces. She felt like she needed to stand on her own 2 feet, be her own woman rather than relying on a man, no matter how much she loved and trusted him. That way, her decisions would be her own rather than under some level of duress. In the same way a child wants independence from her parents, she feels she finally needs independence from me. So we came up with a game plan. Now, the lockdown has obviously made this harder. She is still living with me and my wife currently, but the plan is she's going to go back and get an education. She was capable of attending university and had qualifications, but decided not to due to marriage. My financial security was really born of an inheritance I had after my father died, life insurance. I used to not have to worry about rent during my extended time in education and early career. I bought a small flat with it I still own. I've decided to pay it forward and put her in a similar situation by letting her use my flat, which is currently unoccupied because it's only been rented to students due to its proximity to 2 universities. Yes, this is me financially supporting her, but in a strictly limited way. No more covering errant bills, paying for holidays, or footing the bill when we socialize. She will not pay rent, but she will cover bills on the flat. She didn't love the idea of me owning her home, but I called it my last act as that guy in her life. The pseudo brother, father, sugar daddy, best friend. After this, we'll just be independent siblings and best friends. She will be moving soon. We'll need her room for all since my wife is now 5 months pregnant. Turns out she's been pregnant since late December, and all this started. As for George, he swears up and down he never asked the ex-husband to handle me. He claims he asked how to be fine with me. It wasn't seeking advice on how to deal with me. It was seeking advice on how to be fine with me the way her ex-husband was. Could be true, who knows? It's irrelevant ultimately. Though we recently found out George moved a girlfriend into the house him and Emily used to share, and here's the kicker. It's a longtime friend. Emily is fairly certain he never cheated on her, but she out loud laughed when she found out he's romantically living together with a longtime friend 3 months after the breakup. The dude's insecurity was really born of his own feelings for a friend. He was getting close with a girl he was friends with, so he projected that onto me and Emily. Edit. Just to clarify, because this paints a picture I don't intend, I don't pay all of Emily's bills. nor her stuff and holidays. She doesn't want independence from me specifically, she wants independence full stop. She went from her parents to her now ex-husband's and then spent about a decade living paycheck to paycheck before meeting George and living largely off of his money. She has no real qualifications and her current line of work was limited prospects. The things I do for her come in two categories, and the lack of clarity between the ones-offs and the consistent things made it look like I pay for her entire world. First, there's the trivial stuff I do consistently that I'm stopping as a massive overreaction to George. Logically, it's fine that a brother and his wife do these things for his sister, but they weirdly make her uncomfortable, and it obviously made her ex uncomfortable. Stuff like I've done the odd bit of DIY, specifically fixing a vacuum, which isn't insane given I work in R&D for a vacuum brand, and I pay for her drinks and stuff if we socialize. I'm stopping all the trivial levels of support largely at her request to ease her discomfort at being subsidized by me. It's a pride thing. This might also help with any jealous boyfriends wrongly assuming because I pay for her cinema ticket along with my wife, we're secretly Mormon. The second category were the big one-off things like paying that bill or buying plane tickets, things I did in a crisis and or out of extreme generosity once. She wants to be able to be safe during shit like COVID without needing to live with me. She wants to be able to break up with a guy and be okay alone rather than crashing here. She wants to be able to F up a meter reading on her electricity and weather the silly bill that comes without me paying it. That happened once. I'm not going to stop doing these things entirely. An emergency is an emergency and we won't let her come to any harm, but instead we're going to try and make it that she doesn't need me to do these things via education and hopefully a better job. So yeah, I don't pay for her entire life. I just muddled some big things I've done in an emergency in with some trivial brotherly support. That's all for today. If you're enjoying this story, please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you.